Hello everybody, welcome back to astronomy. This is the last installment, the last module of the course on life in the universe. And this module, you're going to be learning about how we are planning to detect life in the universe, where we're looking for life in the universe, and what life in the universe could possibly be, and how we estimate how much life there might be in the universe. So that's what you're going to be looking at this week. What I wanted to do is take you on a little bit of a tour of the one civilization we know of that has already left the solar system that they live in, and that is, of course, ourselves. We've sent probes to other planets in our solar system, and we've even sent probes that have now officially left our solar system, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. And on board each of those probes was a golden record documenting the culture of humanity at the time that the record left the Earth. And this has been archived for us on the internet, so we can take a look at this. So I wanted to take a minute and just explore that. The website that we're looking at is called goldenrecord.org, and when you load that up in your browser, it starts off with a image of the Hubble Deep Field, kind of a representation that, you know, we're just one of these galaxies in this sea of galaxies. And if you click on that galaxy, it pulls up the Milky Way galaxy, or at least what we think the Milky Way galaxy looks like from afar. And here we are located in just one of the spiral arms of our galaxy. And if we click on that, that zooms into this Voyager spacecraft that is now traveling between the stars. The spacecraft was launched in the late 70s and has been traveling out. It visited all of the outer planets, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, and then it just kept going. And one of the biggest projects on this, in addition to the scientific work, was to send with it a record, literally a record of life on the Earth. So if you go ahead and click on that, you're going to see what this golden record looks like. And this golden record is data that's etched on a disk. And at the time, you know, the way we did that was through phonograph, right? We had a stylus that would lay on top of a record, and then you'd spin the record around. And that's the way they encoded this information. Now, if anybody ever finds this, if any alien species finds this, they have no way of decoding the information on this disk. And so what the top of the disk, the cover of the disk, is really to provide a primer on how to decode this information. So what you're seeing here is this is a visual representation of how you would pull the data off of this. You have this stylus device that would rest upon the record and bounce up and down, and that could be translated into audio signals. And the speed at which you rotate it is schematically dictated with these dashes out here, so they could figure out how fast to rotate it so that the data was read correctly. This is given the dimensions of how that stylus might work. There's some other things on this record, you know, once that they can try to decode. This one up here is telling you how to decode the signals on the record into ones and zeros. And those ones and zeros can be constructed into images. And those images, the first one is an image of a circle. And so if you construct the signal off of this record into these two-dimensional arrays, you're going to get a circle as the first image, and then more images will follow. This is telling you how to decode the audio that's on there. And then there are two other things on here. One is a graphical representation of where we happen to be in the galaxy. Each one of these lines extends out to a known pulsar that has a known frequency that's etched on here. And so presumably any alien species could figure out who we were and where we were by triangulating these pulsar signals that they're also aware of. And this is kind of adorable. This little signal down here, this symbol is a symbol of the hydrogen atom, indicating that we know that most of the universe is made of hydrogen, molecular hydrogen. Of course, this was before we'd really gotten a good idea of what dark matter was, or even that it existed. And so it's kind of adorable that our species still thinks that the universe is mostly made of hydrogen. And what this website does for us is lets us go and explore what people thought was important to send out in this kind of cosmic time capsule to an alien species.
As the Secretary General of the United Nations, an organization of 147 member states who represent almost all of the human inhabitants of the planet Earth, I send greetings on behalf of the people of our planet. We step out of our solar system into the universe seeking only peace and friendship, to teach if we are called upon, to be taught if we are fortunate. We know.
So that's what was first sent out. It's a greetings from the United Nations, the Secretary General of the United Nations. And what continues on with this is greetings in 55 different languages.
Poteste chairete. Eirenikos prosphilus eleluthamen philoi.
Paz e felicidade a todos.
Now these are going to just sound like noise to certain people or certain species if they happen to find this, but they'll be able to at least maybe detect that there are different languages going on there.
يا معشر الجن والإنس
They also
إن
sent
استطعتم أن تنفذوا
whale
من
greetings.
أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا
It's kind of an interesting choice that they sent whale greetings,
يا معشر
considering
الجن والإنس إن
at the time we were
استطعتم
just
أن
learning that
تنفذوا
whales might
من
have
أقطار
a
السماوات والأرض
language of their own.
فانفذوا لا
So if
تنفذون
you listen to
إلا
this for a while, you'll hear the whale greetings. And then they also just sent sounds from Earth. This would be bird songs or, kind of ambient noises. The noise you're hearing now is actually of the kind of interaction of the cosmic rays with the magnetic field of the Earth. And so they just kind of loaded this thing with a bunch of sounds, and you can explore that if you like. They also sent a bunch of images, and I wanted to take a minute to just look at those because I think it's instructive about how we think about aliens as other civilizations, and what it reflects upon our views of our own civilization. So like I said, the very first image that you'll see is a circle, and that's basically a calibration circle. That's to say that if you got the calibration of your data correctly, you should get a circle, and that's something that was dictated on the front of the disk, and this shows that there's a calibration circle. And so presumably the people who put together the images will be able to do that. Now, because of the way the images are constructed, there's only a prime number of a product of two prime number of digits in the entire image. So there's only two ways to put the image together, in rows and columns or columns and rows. And if you put it together wrong, you don't get a circle. If you put it together right, you do get a circle. So that's our calibration circle. Once they do the calibration circle, they show the location of our star in the Milky Way. So there's an image of a spiral galaxy, not our spiral galaxy, but it's what we think the shape of our galaxy looks like, and then a triangulation again of our location. They then start by trying to teach the aliens they then continue to teach the aliens mathematics, or at least our way of symbolizing the mathematics. Clearly, mathematics is a kind of a universal language. If you're counting from 1, 2, 3, and 4, there are specific numbers of things, and how you count, whether you count between tens or twos or whatever, that's all very specific on your culture. But the counting part is something that all civilizations would understand. And so this is just teaching them to go from counting to our symbols for mathematics. Once they have a handle of our symbols, we then begin to talk to them about hydrogen. We get to talk to them about the wavelength of molecular hydrogen. What we're doing here is basically giving them our phone number, because our radio telescopes have been monitoring the molecular bands of hydrogen, or at least near them, for radio signals from other species. And part of that is because it's a relatively quiet part of the radio spectrum, and also our life is basically made of water, and so we think that it's a good place to look if people are willing to communicate. So we're communicating to them that we know what this frequency is, and that we're listening. We then go on to tell them a little bit about our solar system. We give them the size and mass of the sun. We give them the distribution of terrestrial planets. We give them the distribution of gaseous planets with their masses. We then talk a little bit about the sun, and these images were the best resolution, highest tech images we had at the time that we sent that. We talk about the solar spectrum. We talk about the planets in turn. We're basically giving them an introductory astronomy course, at least in terms of what our solar system is like, including pictures of our planet. And then we start to zoom in on our planet and give them some information about the nature of our atmosphere, its composition, and how we talk about chemicals and chemical reactions, what our DNA structure is. We, kind of tell them how our life is orchestrated. We then begin to talk about the anatomy of humans, and we show them pictures of what human beings look like. Now, it's interesting that they kind of start with the skeleton. We haven't even seen the picture of a human without its, or with its skin on, so to speak. But it goes through a bunch of pictures of anatomy. And then it starts to get into gestation and how life is formed. So we're talking about sexual reproduction, we're talking about embryos, how those embryos are carried to term, the differentiations between the biology of the organism that carries the life to term, how birth works, how nursing works. And I wanted to stop on this picture very quickly because one of the things that I always found striking about the inclusion of this picture is that the only reason I can think to include it is to show that we rear our young for a long period of time. We have very, very strong bonds between our young, and that we rear them for a long period of time, which is not common amongst the animal species, but it is something that human beings do. And then we get into sort of social groups. They go through trying to show what a family dynamic would look like in terms of the ranges of ages. And then we get into geology, structure of the earth, and you can go through and look through these things. I'm just going to flip forward to one picture that I thought was really fascinating that we included in this, and that's this one right here. It shows a human being on a horse with a dog crossing the sand dunes. And one of the things I find so striking about this is that, this is a hallmark of our species, that we cooperate with other creatures. And the fact that none of the creatures in this picture are there by force. A horse will not stay with you unless it wants to. A dog will not stay with you unless it wants to. And the fact that all of these three organisms are cooperating together is I think, a fascinating representation of us as a species. And you can go through this. It goes through some of the most amazing things that they have on the pictures of the earth. It's just fun to see what we decided to include, kind of imagining what would it look like if another species sent us a record of their civilization. So that's the golden record. I encourage you to take a look at that and think about what it means that human beings have sent a disk out into the universe that demonstrates that the universe did evolve life, and that life is attempted to communicate with other life forms in the universe. And as you're going through this module this week and you're looking at how we're trying to find life and our efforts to discover life and communicate with life, I want you to recognize that the universe already has an organism that has reached out, and we're kind of just waiting for a response.